So yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and actually I'm also very happy that you are here today. Thank you for the nice introduction. I will be speaking about the age of machines and how to rethink user experience. And I've actually investigated and was concerned with this topic of smart devices, digital assistants, and chatbots in the last 1.5 to 2 years at CyberSolutions. So this is also eventually what brought me here today. So what will I be talking about in the next roughly 20 minutes? Well, first of all, we will have a brief look at user experience and e-commerce as we know it, and what it's like today. Okay. Now it works again. Then I will speak about the age of machines and what actually does this term and this phrase mean. And then why this actually leads or has an effect on the customer journey and how it, to a certain degree, disrupts this customer journey. And of course, it's about why and how to rethink UX, and this also involves some very personal experiences from my work in the last 1.5 to 2 years. So let's get it started, I would say. User experience and e-commerce as we know it, especially at events like this one. We hear a lot about user experience and what it means and what effects it has and so on. And I have taken two basic perspectives on that. On one hand, user experience, if you look at it from theory, well, it's often something like this. You find a lot of different models out there describing user experience, something like this. It's usually comprised of different attributes and values that make a user experience and that define a user experience in the end. So something has to be useful, it has to be, for example, usable, desirable, has to deliver some added value in the end. Maybe sometimes it builds on top of each other or it composes this experience in the end. So that's how it is often described in theory. If we look at it from a practical point of view, probably you know it, in e-commerce it looks usually somehow like this. You have kind of inspiration phase where you actually think about a product, think about a need that you have as a user. You make a selection, so you limit the choice, you narrow down the range of products that are interesting for you. You actually make the purchase, and then you get a delivery, and hopefully it looks a bit better than in this picture here. And well, you use your product and hopefully you're happy with it. So that's put in a very simple manner what user experience means in practice. And the experience actually, of course, may be for the better or the worse in each of these different phases. So what does this have to do now with machines, and what kind of machines am I actually talking about? Well, as you heard in the beginning, it's mainly 3 categories of machines. Well, first of all, you have chatbots, and probably you have all used one or the other of them already, like we have here on the top left. You have voice assistants, like all the devices that came up in the last years, and you have smart devices. And these are the main categories I'll be talking about today. And they all involve certain characteristics, or they have certain commonalities. First of all, of course, they involve a conversation, or you could also say an interaction between you, the user, and the device. They help you actually doing things you don't have to do manually anymore. So it's also about automation to a certain degree. They create value by this. And of course, it's about smartness. And I've avoided a bit the term intelligence here because intelligence is a bit of a difficult term in this context. But you could say that these devices acquire information and they use this information to actually perform the tasks they are intended to do. So this is basically what characterizes these assistants. If we look at how everything in this area developed, the evolution was quite fast. So if we take the iPhone and the introduction of Siri in 2011 as a starting point, from then on, everything went quite fast. We had a lot of different devices, a lot of different ecosystems and also a lot of different providers in the last years, including also tools to actually create and to actually shape user experiences, like the Luban tool from Alibaba. And nowadays, well, we see a lot of different devices which are especially voice-enabled. We see more and more, and this is where we currently are, we see more and more an integration of voice technology and also digital assistants into existing devices. For example, in the car or in other smart home environments and so on. So we could say it was actually a decade of digital assistants, a very interesting decade, of course. And you could also say that machines are taking over in this sense. And this is, if we look at some numbers, I mean, you find a lot of numbers on the topic out there, but I've just collected a few of them to illustrate that. So we already saw the 2.5 billion or even more than 2.5 billion voice-enabled devices that we have nowadays, more or less. It's expected to have even up to 8 billion in the next years. So, and 2023, as it is stated here, is not that far away anymore. It's quite close. We see that more and more millennials use voice assistants. We also heard that in one of the other presentations earlier this morning. And yeah, for millennials, it plays a huge role and they grow up with it. Also, yeah, voice assistants are used and also other digital assistants are used to make purchases along of, well, aside from a lot of other different tasks. And not only from the user point of view, but also from the retailer's point of view, from the shop provider's point of view, and from your point of view, probably it makes also in other fields sense. Like, for example, in customer service operations, it's expected to have a huge increase in the use of digital assistants, and we will see more of that later on. So, and if we consider this, that these assistants are getting more and more ubiquitous, they are getting more and more important from the user's point of view. And on the other hand, we say we see this, what Ray Kurzweil, so not anybody, but Ray Kurzweil said, that artificial intelligence will reach human levels by around 2029. Then it leads us to actually the impacts and the somehow disruption of the customer journey. And yeah, the next part of this. Well, if we look at customer journeys, they usually look like this. And as you can see here in the examples, from getting from inspiration, the selection of a product, purchasing, maybe choosing some financing, getting a delivery, as you saw before, using the product, and so on. You see a lot of opportunities already where digital assistants can play a role, where they often already play a role, be it chatbots for inspiration, for maybe selecting a product, being even devices which make their own purchases, for example. Even that's possible, getting information from a voice speaker about delivery, and so on. And we will look closer into some of these use cases in a few minutes. But this is generally how it looks like and what opportunities for digital assistants are in this context. You could say, just to sum this up a bit, digital assistants accompany users along their customer journeys. I think that's an important aspect. And in this sense also, they personalize the e-commerce experience based on conversations. They make it more personal. They tailor it more to the user's preferences. And of course, they also connect technical features with human interaction, because human interaction, of course, still plays an important role along these customer journeys. For example, if somebody goes to a physical shop and so on, if somebody calls a hotline, also, so this human interaction is complemented and supported by digital assistants in one or the other way. And yeah, we will take a look into 4 of these different touch points and how digital assistants can be used along these touch points within the next slides and the next minutes. So first of all, when it comes to inspiration and selection, I've picked the example. We are working very closely with Cyberport, the online and offline store for electronic goods. And if you search for a notebook 15-inch gaming there, it's a quite specific term, you get more than 1,500 available notebooks. I mean, that's great, it's a lot of choice. And you get 30 filters to drill that down. Well, but of course it also means that searching and filtering and getting and finding the right notebook, of course, requires knowledge and time. And well, finding the right notebook is complex, so you have to know what you're looking for, you have to know what is important, and it can be tedious. So what we did in this case, we developed a notebook finder chatbot that helps based on a very limited number of questions about what the users would like their notebook to use for, what kind of budget they have, and so on. And it delivers, well, a very limited list of notebook recommendations. So this chatbot, in this case, this assistant guides users finding the right notebook. It can abstract from the technical details, so it doesn't ask what kind of graphics card do you want to have or what kind of processor, but it abstracts from these details in terms of that it asks for the usage, intention, and so on. And of course, something like this makes the search faster and more personal. And that's an added value in this sense. And that's just one example. We come to another example. You would say it's a pretty simple one, but still, or maybe because of that, it can deliver a great added value. And that's a kind of delivery status assistant telling you actually where your delivery is. What's the status? Is there any delay? When will you actually receive your purchase? Because it's something you are looking forward to normally when your purchase will arrive. So I think the important part is that it's not only seamless but proactive. So it's not the user who has to look up where his or her delivery actually is and when it will come, but it's the assistant that takes the step and that does this proactively. It communicates a transparency. It communicates a transparent status of the expected delivery, and of course, this can create confidence and appreciation because it means, well, the shop or the retailer I've bought a product from actually cares about where this product is, when it gets delivered, and so on. So it creates confidence and appreciation. And then, if we're talking about taking care of the customer and, well, appreciating the customer, of course, we also have the field of customer service itself. And there, of course, you can also use digital assistants and chatbots and voice assistants in one or the other way, actually in a lot of ways. Well, first of all, I think that's quite obvious. These assistants can be always there, especially also when human agents are not there. They can provide fast and precise answers. That's also something we saw from our own research regarding the chatbot. People told us, well, sometimes I just like to get a fast answer, to get it precisely, that I don't have to do small talk with a human agent. I just want this answer and I'm good to go. And that's something such an assistant is capable to provide. Of course, it can be part of or should be part of a seamless experience across different devices. And of course, it complements and supports human agents in the conversations. What on one hand means that, it can, for example, take over the more trivial questions from the human agents so that they have more time to focus actually on the more complex and more interesting questions from customers. And of course, it can also support them, for example, in providing the right information to actually phrasing an answer and providing this information in a very fast way. So this is also how it can help human agents in terms of customer service. And then we come to the last example from the customer journey and from the different touch points, and that's a bit more futuristic than the others maybe, but that's something, I mean, we are also here to look a bit into the future, so I think that's also an important and interesting case, and that's more like a personal user assistant. Actually, an assistant that accompanies users that provides hints, for example, after they have purchased the product, after they are actually using it. It provides hints for the usage, recommendations, what others, for example, did with the product, and thereby creates an added value. It can, of course, also connect with other users in a social way, so that you can exchange with these other users, for example, how to use your newly purchased camera, what to do to make the best out of the product, and so on. And, well, it can inform, of course, also about relevant updates, because it might mean that you are interested in the field of digital photography, and that you might be interested in news about cameras and other devices in this area. And, well, all of this, of course, means that you take care, and this assistant takes care of the user, and that it gives a feeling of appreciation as well. And of course, it also means from a provider's, from a shop owner's or retailer's point of view, that it learns about what's actually important for the users, what's important for the customers in terms of how they use their products and in terms of their interests. Well, and all of this, of course, hopefully makes the purchase more than a purchase and more of an experience. And I think that's what we are all looking for and what we actually intend to provide to users. So if we take these examples now that we've looked at in the last minutes, why do we have to rethink UX, and how do we actually do that? So let's look at that. Well, first of all, why does this actually impact UX, and how do we rethink? How do we and should we rethink it? Well, first of all, we saw that in the examples. Of course, all of this shortens processes. It saves time for the user. For example, in the search process for a notebook, we saw that example. Of course, it also means that the user needs are changing, so users might not come to your online shop anymore for getting information about a product, getting information about price or availability, but maybe they only come to your shop to make actually the purchase, and everything else they decided and looked up before. It could, in consequence, it could also mean less touch points with human users from a shop owner's, provider's point of view. And of course, the experience itself, from the user's point of view, are changing. So it gets less visual. It's more, at least at the moment, with the devices we have now, we see it's more, of course, voice-based. It's more text-based. It's a bit less visual. And of course, all of this also means that you might get less user attention in the end, and that you have a more limited time to actually interact with the user directly. And this also has to do with a more and more of an integration into existing devices. We see a lot of chatbots, for example, integrated into channels like WhatsApp, like Telegram, and Facebook Messenger, and so on. So there's more of an integration into existing devices, and that also changes, of course, expectations. Where we have new gatekeepers, namely the providers, the companies which provide these systems, these tools, these technologies, and they become the gatekeepers. And of course, it changes expectations, as I mentioned before, because people maybe grow up with it, and definitely they get used to it. They use it day by day in different contexts. They use voice, they use text, they use chat, and all of this, of course, alters the expectations, even if it doesn't play so much of a role right now in the field you may be. And last but not least, one additional aspect, of course, if we look a bit beyond all of this, of course, these assistants or machines are also the new designers to a certain degree, because they can, as I mentioned before, they can create, they can shape user experiences, they can make designs, banners, so on. They can even implement this kind of stuff to a certain degree. So they also help to create user experiences in the end. And this is also why we have to rethink user experience. Okay, and well, you might ask, well, how do we actually do that? And I've collected some of the experiences we made when we investigated and worked on this topic in the last months and years. Well, first of all, it sounds a bit trivial, but in fact, in practice, it's not. From my experience, understand your users. I mean, that's always important, but in this context, it's even more important to understand their conversations. Why do they actually come to your shop? Why do they have a conversation with you? What kind of jobs do they want to get done in these steps? Then, of course, based on this, to identify the role and value of digital assistants. So what kind of value can a digital assistant actually provide in this context? And then that's maybe the most tricky part. Well, how can you actually become part of this conversations? How can you actually utilize digital assistants to create an added value for your users and for your customers? Personal advice, start simple. Don't try to invent or develop the ultimate bot or the ultimate voice experience in the first place, but start simple, start with a simple use case that delivers a certain added value and then go on iteratively from there on. And of course, it's always helpful to learn from other fields, especially voice assistants and also chat is used in a lot of different fields, and I think we can learn a lot from that, how this is actually used, especially considering the fact that we are still in a rather early stage when it comes to these technologies and how they are used by users. Well, let AI and, well, assistance based on AI, that's more what it's about, let it help you. I mean, it provides already a lot of opportunities, as I mentioned before, to create experiences, to make stuff, and to actually create unique experiences. And that's something you should make use of, from my point of view. And maybe the most important and personal point, don't wait, because you could say it's already too late. It's not something like science fiction. It's not something that might happen at some point in the future, but it's happening right now, day by day. People get used to these devices and doing that more and more, and that's why user experience already changes day by day, so don't wait until you investigate this topic. So, and this is also why we have to rethink user experience. Thank you very much.